Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Deutsche Goldmesse is brought to you by Defiance Silver.
Last decade, Discovery Group's Kaminak Gold was acquired by Goldcorp for $520 million. Discovery Group's next act in the Yukon is Fireweed Metals. I'm with CEO Brandon Macdonald. Brandon, welcome back to Kitco.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Brandon, can you talk about organizational developments at Fireweed over the past 12 months? I've noticed you seem to be adding a lot of organizational heft.
Yeah, I think, by picking up a second project, well, a third as well, and the third one being exploration, but with two mature projects and then an injection of $35 million in capital in December and the intended pace that comes along with that, yeah, absolutely, it was time to staff up, right? So, most recently announcing hiring VP Ops, Andrew Crook, and in the last year, strengthening the permitting and sustainability team, all sorts of other internal stuff. The exploration team just hired 3 additional geos. There's a lot to do. So it's feels good, and we're busy, but it's definitely a different pace than what Fireweed started at for me.
Describe the company then. You've gone through the name change. You've added some additional assets, additional property right now. So how do you describe Fireweed Metals?
Yeah, I would say we were focused on, critical minerals or critical metals, maybe even before it, became cool. I was actually looking at Google Trends today and noticed that the inflection point really for that search term was late 2021. Which was just after we started the process to acquire the Mactung Project, which was then finally announced in June 2022. And that, kind of led to the name change from zinc to metals, really, because we weren't just a zinc company anymore. And, we view Macmillan Pass as sort of an emerging premier zinc district, pretty evidently with the exploration success we've had there and the existing resource already. And we view Mactung really as, I think with very little debate, the best tungsten deposit in the world. So having these two fantastic projects and, pushing them both forward, growing, expanding, de-risking, now looking at permitting and feasibility and hopefully eventually construction, really is what the company's about.
I think one of the major milestones at Fireweed has been the involvement of the Lundins. Describe what that is.
Yeah, so in December we talked about that big $35 million injection in cash we had in December, and $20 million of that came from the Lundin family, really, and that was the result of a 5-year engagement with them, maybe, right? So the initial deposits we had bought off Hudbay, Tom and Jason. Excellent deposits, the resource and economics we put on in 2018, very good looking deposits, but you wouldn't just describe them as like a premier zinc project. Like you would say very good, very healthy in a mid-tier, something that certainly a mid-tier should really covet. But it was the addition of the extra land and then really the exploration success we had on that made the Lundin family look at this and see the similarities from other projects they looked at where, the iteration of exploration success took something to, a best in class, right? And so it really got their attention. The drill holes we put out last year were incredible. And I mean, we think about the discovery we made at Boundary Zone and Boundary West. Initially, we drilled it in 2019. We had better holes in 2020. We had better holes in 2021. We had better holes in 2022. And in fact, our project, which has been drilled since the 50s, 6 of the 10 best drill holes all time were last year, right? So when your geological understanding is maturing and when your targeting is improving like that, yeah, groups like the Lundin family, who are extremely savvy about these things, recognize that you're onto something pretty special.
What's the opportunity in the tungsten market?
Well, tungsten, the super unique thing about tungsten, the crisis and the opportunity, so to speak, is that China absolutely dominates the market, right? So they're 85% of supply, and 85% of supply in some metals is kind of like, okay, well, shrug, because they have so much processing facilities and stuff like that. But they're actually 85% of mine supply. right? So the vast majority of the tungsten market is through China, with about another 5% through Russia, right? So this means, for everything from drill bits for consumers to mining equipment to aerospace to defense applications, 90% of the global tungsten market is touched by China and Russia. So this has led really to a high degree of anxiety in a lot of countries in the West, particularly the US, who just recently passed a law that said by 2026 that defense contractors cannot source tungsten products or inputs that at any point gone through the value chain have gone through Russia or China, right? So this is giving them 3 short years to make some alternative plans.
What's the latest on the zinc markets?
I think we're kind of coming out of the energy crisis in Europe, right? Obviously, the last year, that 2022, that created a huge squeeze in physical zinc metal because so many smelters reliant on Russian gas to be economical, went half production or outright shuttered, and so that really squeezed the physical market. And I heard some traders describe that zinc inventories were at one point best measured in hours of global consumption, right? So it's normalized a bit now. I think now that the physical smelter side is kind of normalizing, the eyeballs have to shift to the mine supply side. And what we see is a cupboard that's pretty bare for development projects. There's a couple big projects coming down the pipe, Ozernoye in Russia, which again, kind of a question mark on that, both project in terms of technical and geographic and political merits. Kapushi in DRC, again, a wonderful deposit, difficult jurisdiction. But after that, it's maybe some brownfields expansions, but in terms of really great greenfield projects, it's pretty challenging, right? So I think medium term, I'm not, of course, I have to pitch the bull case for zinc, but medium term, next couple of years, I don't know if there'll be a big move. There's obviously room for black swan events, but it's the 3 to 4 to 5 and onward, horizon where it looks to be a total crisis. And as we know, the lead time to develop mining projects is such that there's no way to address that, even if you start now.
Now, the last time I talked to you, and I'm going to exclude Paul Harris from this equation, who drops in occasionally for help, but last time I was talking to you, that was when the Canadian government recently announced some of the initiatives around supporting of mining, and that's something that's been following within all of the governments. They say that we need to get behind critical minerals, we need to get behind copper because we need to feed energy transition and we need to reduce reliance on what is happening in Asian markets. So when I was talking to you, you liked what was happening on the finance side with the Canadian governments. You liked some of the credits they were getting, but the one that you needed to see more work on was around permitting, support for permitting, being able to kind of see projects through. So we've had a couple of months with this right now. What are you seeing right now from the Canadian government and then also from the BC government?
Yeah, well, extremely topical for literally right now is I just submitted my tax return last week and I had critical mineral flow through from last year. So the extra 15% tax credit's nice, right? Yeah. And that's really real, and it's nice to see the actual impact of that. And it's good, I think, for companies now, that's going to get more normalized, more competitive pricing on that. But I think the big question marks are going to be around, okay, so what does this mean for permitting? That's not a quick fix necessarily. I don't feel the permitting process as written in Canada is a big issue. I feel the permitting process in Canada as executed can be. I think that a lot of government groups that are handling the permitting are just under-equipped. I don't think they have enough people. I don't think they have the skills. I think that they're being left to handle stuff that's challenging for these small groups of people to deal with. So certainly from our point of view, we'd like to see the government invest in people, attracting private sector experts in mining into the permitting groups in government, right? And that, will reduce although the permitting process fundamentally stays exactly the same, it's going to reduce times, right? Because you're spending less time waiting, you're dealing with less questions that maybe you shouldn't be. And I think the other big thing is capacity as well within the First Nations. And I think the government's talked about capacity funding within the First Nations, but they need to be able to participate in the permitting process and understand what they're participating in, which means they need the capacity to do that as well. And so I think that capacity funding is a critical part of it, right? And I think if without any changes to the law, the government can address those capacity issues within First Nations governments and within their own governments, that's going to maybe even feel like fast tracking because it's just going to be right back on the track that it should be. But then, other initiatives, they've talked about this big pool of money for infrastructure for critical mineral projects. It's not clear how that gets allocated or what the process is. I think right now it's a bit conceptual. So as it starts to emerge as an actual process and we see how to access that, I think that's going to be really important.
We were talking earlier, and it was surprising. It was regarding the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, your project is based in Canada. The Inflation Reduction Act was really to support U.S. How would you say, U.S. resource sector, energy transition as well too. You saw benefits to the Inflation Reduction Act. Why?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to understand that the U.S. considers, with this bilateral agreement on critical minerals with Canada, that a project in Canada is fundamentally as good as a project in the U.S. to the U.S. government, right? So in terms of their needs to meet the demands for the U.S. industry, Canada is the U.S. as far as they're concerned, right? So what that means is that the pools of money in the U.S. government for critical minerals can be accessed by companies in Canada, including ourselves, right? So we intend to and are very diligently exploring that. What is available to us, how we access it. And the nice thing is I think the US government is a little bit ahead of the curve compared to Canada on this. I think that there are established processes there for applying for this money and they're pretty quick turnaround. So within established processes, you have lobbyists, et cetera, who have been through it before, understand the application, can work with you on it. It doesn't feel like this black box or this confusing process, right? So I think that's going to be a big thing for critical minerals in Canada is the relationship. We talk about the friend shoring, right? So this is going to be not just the U.S. It's going to be the EU agreements with maybe a Japan or something like that, where critical minerals in Canada can tap strategic funds from other governments, right? And I think that could be a great sort of enabler of progress on these projects.
What's your view of the Teck Glencore saga? A couple of weeks ago, Glencore attempted to do a takeover of Teck. We're seeing kind of a circling the wagons right now of Teck, of like a Canadian company stepping back. It's kind of the first action I've really seen, like in the base metal sector. Everybody, our friends on the precious metal side were looking for the M&A that was happening. We've seen that in a big way with the Newmont, Newcrest. We've seen that with Sabina, with B2 Gold. On the base metal side, it seems like there has been, this has provided excitement. This has provided that there's some energy that's happening in the space. But at the same time, there's also real concerns about maintaining a Canadian champion. Should also note as well, too, that Teck is, an investor within Fireweed.
Yeah, they own about 8.5% of the company, and they've been excellent partners. They're one block over from my office, right? So we frequently meet with them, and I think they had a well-deserved reputation. That they tried to cultivate this partner of choice, right? Which is being easy to deal with, being collaborative, and investing in the success of juniors around them, and really being a key part of the Canadian ecosystem around juniors, right? And so as Inco and Goldcorp and all these Canadian champions get acquired and move out of the country, it would, notwithstanding the merits of I think there's a huge amount of operational merits in a Teck Glencore merger, right? In just the zinc space, but it would be a little heartbreaking if the headquarters doesn't stay in Canada for the metal side. And I think that culturally, Glencore, I think, as we all know, is not the same culture as Teck, right? And so which culture prevails there? Does that partner of choice, prevail, right? I think reality is different than perception, but certainly the perception of Glencore is the exact opposite of the partner of choice. I think people recognize them as extremely shrewd negotiators, right? And it's not to say that Teck are not shrewd negotiators, but I think there's always the concern that Glencore's trying to get the better view or something like that, right? So which of those cultures prevails? TBD if it goes ahead, like it does. I don't think from our point of view, a merged Teck Glencore is reaffirms its place as the number one zinc producer in the world. But that's combined more smelters they own combined, right? And means more feed they need. I don't think there's going to be any kind of rationalization of zinc assets there that leaves Fireweed outside their plants. I think our Macmillan Pass project is better than any greenfields project in Teck or Glencore, right? So, look, it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. I think it may come down to the government, so we'll see.
Lastly, Brandon, milestones for the next 12 months.
Resource on Mactung, I don't want to say imminent because I'd said that before and it turned out not to be imminent, but let's say before the end of this quarter.
Imminent-ish?
Imminent-ish, yeah, imminent adjacent.
You can own that one if you want.
Yeah. Drilling starting in about a month. Hopefully drill results starting to trickle in, I'm guessing in August, depending on how the labs are. That was about the lead time to first drill results last year. Resource update on Mac Pass early next year. Economic studies on both mid next year or early to mid next year. Just a lot happening, right? So, and ultimately this year's drill program as big as the last 4 years combined, right? And we talked about how 2020 was better than 2019 and 2022 or 2021 and 2022 and like 2023. Maybe we'll have 6 of the top 10 drill holes all time on the project again this year. It's possible, right? So we're really, we got some bangers last year, and I think our understanding is improving.
Brandon, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Michael McRae here at Deutsche Goldmesse 2023 for Kitco Mining.
Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Deutsche Goldmesse is brought to you by Defiance Silver.